Welcome again to the AAC Talks session entitled AAC Apps, Considerations for Selecting, Customizing, and Getting Started. And this is part 2. And we're pleased to have our AAC Talks speaker, Lauren Enders, joining us today from the Bucks County Intermediate Unit. Lauren, I'll turn it over to you for you to continue your session and maybe introduce yourself briefly for those of us who are joining us for the first time.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So I am Lauren Enders, and this is part 2. I just kind of blazed through part 1. We went through a lot of information in a short period of time, and I'm going to add to that information in this part. When we're talking about AAC apps, considerations for selecting AAC apps, for customizing them, and for just getting started. So this is part 2, and hi again. So I am a speech language pathologist working as a full-time AT and AAC consultant in Bucks County at the IU. And I mentioned in the last time that in the last session that my claim to fame is as a profuse sharer on social media. I share a lot of information and resources, but I also gain a lot through networking with other folks that are doing the same thing and have the same passion for AAC. So if you are looking for any more information, you can feel free to follow me on, Pinterest or Twitter or Facebook or any of those social media sites. So this is the handout for the second part, for part 2, the slides. The handout for the first one was shown in part 1. I can actually put the links. So in the chat, before we started, I had an email asking about sharing. So I did videos, if you're just joining us, in our whirlwind tour of some of the robust core-based, symbol-based AAC apps in part 1. I showed some videos, and I wasn't able to show entire clips of all of them. And it was, we went through them kind of quickly. So I had someone email me and ask if I could share those videos, which I am happy to do. So what I did in the few moments that I had between these sessions was I created a folder on my OneDrive, and in the chat you should see, let's see if I can pull it up. In the chat you should see a link to that folder. Now right now, don't worry, there's nothing in it. You're not in the wrong spot. It is empty. But after, sometime this afternoon or this evening, I will upload all of those videos that I made with the app demos. And I can also put a couple of links in there, so I can put the links to both handouts and, anything else. So hopefully that is helpful. And if you need, let's see, oops, didn't mean to do that. So hopefully everybody's got the handout at this point. So that QR code, you could actually just point your phone at it and it should launch, or you have that bit.ly link, which should launch it. But hopefully everybody's good to go, and I am going to start. So our learning objectives for this portion is, one of them is similar, is that I would like you to, with any app that I'm going to discuss in this portion, in the second portion, I'd love you to be able to identify at least one unique feature of that robust AAC app. We started talking about the difference between folder-based and motor plan-based AAC systems in part 1, but I'm going to review that. So I would love for you to be able to explain the difference between those. To identify 2 robust AAC apps that will run on the Android platform, and explain why electronic and manual paper backups are essential for any high-tech AAC system, whether that's an app system or an app-based system, or whether it's a dedicated device. So just in review, folder-based AAC apps, they have the vocabulary organized categorically. So if you're looking for a monkey, then you're probably going to go perhaps to things, and then animals, and then maybe wild animals, and then you find monkey. So many people like them, folder-based apps, because it is intuitive. If you know your categories and you don't know the system, you can kind of find your way to the right things because you know your categories. Because things are in multiple folders, however, it can require numerous navigations, and we know that sometimes that can be a challenge. So words that are repeated within the system can be in different spots, which is also sometimes challenging. Whereas in a motor plan-based app, the vocabulary is organized differently. It's organized with intent to just maintain consistency in where the buttons are. And it might not be quite as obvious where things should be because it's not based upon categories that we know. There are fewer navigations in motor plan-based systems, which can make it more efficient and much quicker to get to what you're looking for. And it's something that I've found that in my travels and going to conferences and in meeting people around the world who are either supporting AAC users or who are actually people who use AAC to communicate, what I have found is that the majority of individuals who have been AAC users their whole life, or whether they have started as children or not, the ones that are the most competent communicators I find are often on motor plan-based apps or devices. So just something to think about. Not that you cannot be a successful user in a folder-based system. I don't mean that at all, but it's something that I have observed. So if we're looking real quickly, I'm going to review this. When we're talking about robust motor plan-based AAC app features, it's the same features with the exception of the motor plan part as any other robust AAC app, even if it's folder-based. So they run on an iPad, they have dynamic display, their voice output, their robust core. You can customize them, you can color code them, you can electronically back them up and restore them. They have keyboards or alphabet for you to be able to spell with. There are locks for certain. We certainly know that, I know a lot of the kids that I support, especially those that are on the autistic spectrum, are little Houdinis. So I really have to lock systems down like it's, Fort Knox, so that they're not getting in and being creative with their editing. That you can be able to import your own images or your own symbols, that you can share the message window, that you can hide and show buttons to help with, in the learning process, perhaps making things less overwhelming visually. But this is the new part when we're talking about motor plan-based apps, that the apps that I'm showing, and there's only a couple of them, have a consistent motor plan. All right, so the first one is LAMP Words for Life. And LAMP Words for Life is from Prinky Corporation, which is a well-known, well-established leader in the AAC field. They've been putting out these devices for many, many years. They have always been motor plan based. They are based on the MinSpeak language and based on the Unity language system. There is a site called minspeak.com, which really does a nice job of kind of explaining that language. LAMP Words for Life is available in English and Spanish, and you can flip between the two languages, somewhat like you can with Proloquo to Go, but there aren't additional, it's not French or Dutch, just English and Spanish. One of the keys I find with PRC is because they have been, core-based and working at this for so long, the level of support and implementation, and some of the other apps that we reviewed in the last portion, they have some really nice, there's Core Word Classroom from Proloquo to Go, which has some really nice resources. Avaz posts resources on their Facebook page. There are definitely some very nice resources, but PRC is truly a leader in terms of the types of implementation supports they put out. And I do recommend that regardless of what system you use, if you are supporting those using or learning AAC, to really take a look at AAC Language Lab from Prinky Romick. Because even if you're not using a PRC system, whether it's dedicated or LAMP on an iPad, there are some really amazing resources in there that can help pretty much anybody supporting AAC users. So I often like to mention that. I have no relationship with the company. I'm not getting any kind of financial support based upon me sharing it. I'm sharing it because I think that they're really amazing resources. So LAMP is very robust. It is customizable. The symbols are different from what you would have seen in Proloquo to Go or Avaz or Touch Chat, because the symbols were created to be multi-meaning. So, under one symbol, it may not just be one thing that it's referring to several different topics or themes that you would have buttons on that page that are under that symbol. So again, minspeak.com would help kind of understand how all that works. There are free trainings on LAMP, which is language acquisition through motor planning, and of course the LAMP app that can be accessed, all over the country and probably even the world. There is a tool called the Vocabulary Builder, which is really, really helpful, which allows you to easily hide and show from a developmental standpoint. So maybe maybe you're just showing, certain words that are earlier developing initially, and then you can easily add in what you want to show when they're ready for a few more words. And you can do that through a tool called the Vocabulary Builder. You can program in the PASS software, which New Voice, which they're actually changing to a new system called Empower, but that's still, we're on the very, very beginning end of that, and many of us still are using the old Prinky-Romic software. So I know many of you might not know what I'm talking about, but if you are familiar at all with Prinky-Romic systems, and especially the dedicated systems, they've been using software called New Voice, which was in the PASS software. I guess it's a family, I'm not sure. That software allows you to emulate LAMP on a Windows-based computer, and it is free. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to email me. I'm going to show my email at the end. I'm sure there will be questions. Please feel free to, anything that comes up in your mind as I go through it. Again, we only have a short period of time for me to share a lot of information. So I expect there to be questions, and feel free to reach out and ask them. So LAMP Words for Life looks like this. If you're familiar with an accent or some of the older Prinky-Romic devices, it looks similar, but it has been, the Unity programming has been rearranged in LAMP to really support consistent motor planning even more. So let's take a look. Some highlights.
Took a brief look at LAMP Words for Life when we were doing part 1 because we wanted to look at what is a motor plan based app, and LAMP Words for Life is certainly a perfect example of a motor plan based app. What I would like to show you now is the different levels that we have in LAMP Words for Life. We know that the most complex language would be possible through the full version of LAMP Words for Life, which is the sequenced. If you're familiar with Prinky-Romic products and Unity, the 84 sequence, it even goes higher than that, is where we have the fullest complement of language with morphology and all kinds of things that we can add in and really make all the parts of language that help us express ourselves in the most complex ways. And that, of course, is going to be our goal. Of course, we know that not everybody is at that very complex level. They may be just learning, they may have, cognitive impairment that allows them to use language, but perhaps not as complex as some others. So if we have our sequenced, if I hit I have all of these other options. And in some cases, like a kindergartner that I'm starting to work with this year, this was really too much for her. It just didn't make sense to her. So what we did for her is went into the vocabulary and started her with LAMP Words for Life one hit. Now, of course, you have less vocabulary here, but what you have is when you touch a button, it speaks automatically and there is no navigation. So individuals can get used to the fact that they push a button and that they're communicating something, and that hopefully they're using these kinds of words to be able to start to gain control over their environment and over other people, to start to make a connection that communication is power. So one hit is the way that you speak it.
Play.
I touch play, it says play. Have, it says have, and that's how this works. We can then move someone up the continuum by going to transition. And what this does is it starts someone understanding the need to navigate, because again, our end result is hopefully going to be that we can get to the full version where we have so much more access to language. But in this transitional level, what it's teaching is, okay, you're going to have to navigate and you're going to have to hit it again. But there's not all of the other things that you would see on this page if it were the full version. So it's still simplified. Once they get through that transitional level, then we can look at Words for LAMP Word for Life Full. So now if we go to I, you can see all of these other things. We have conjugations of I, we have some phrases with I, and of course in this app, like many other apps, not only do we have these 3 levels, but within these levels, we do have the ability to hide and show buttons as the individual is learning. So that's one of the keys that I wanted to show you for LAMP Words for Life. Took a brief.
Okay, so LAMP Words for Life as a robust motor plan-based augmentative communication app has features, and who might those features serve well? Well, individuals with varying cognitive skills. So you do not have to be entirely, typical or have, entirely intact cognitive skills to use LAMP Words for Life. Absolutely not. We have lots of individuals who have intellectual impairment, and other disabilities that are able to use LAMP quite well. LAMP Words for Life is direct selection only. So you need to be direct selection using touch. So you're using your finger and you are touching the screen. You can use a key guard, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, but you need to be a direct selector if you're using LAMP on an iPad. Now, if you were using LAMP Words for Life on a dedicated device from Coughdrop, then you could scan. So using an accent, if you are using a dedicated device like an accent from Coughdrop, I have a student recently where we were exploring some options, and we wanted to look at a PRC system, a Coughdrop system with MinSpeak and Unity. And the team decided that they wanted to use, now he's going to have a dedicated device because he's using eye gaze, but he can somewhat use, he can use direct selection, although he's slow and not entirely accurate all the time. So eye gaze is better for him. But what the team decided was, rather than using standard Unity, they wanted to use LAMP Words for Life on the accent, because should that accent, and it's kind of not should, when that accent goes down, whether it's, battery or whether it's broken or whatever happens, because we know those things happen with high-tech things, that if the accent is out of commission, then he can be transferred to an iPad with LAMP Words for Life with a key guard. And while it won't give him eye gaze, he still will have access to his language, even if it's a little bit slower. And that's another case where you might use LAMP if you have an accent, but it's a backup method. If you're someone who's going to benefit from consistent motor plan, which I think most people do, if you have a team who is willing to learn and support MinSpeak language, I will say that it really confuses a lot of people that the symbols look very, very different than what we're typically used to seeing in, whether it's PCS from BoardMaker, whether it's symbol sticks. They don't necessarily make as much sense because they were drawn to have multiple meanings. But what I try to encourage people to understand, that a symbol is really just what it's taught to be. Is there any reason why a triangle pointing to the right means play? Well, we've learned that on most of our DVD players and VCR, if you're old like me, and that's what it meant, because we were taught that. People really kind of put a little too much stock in, what a symbol looks like. It's really just that you teach it. But I will say that there have been times where I might have felt that LAMP would have been an excellent option for a student. But if the majority of the team really, really was having a difficult time wrapping their heads around it, for a system to be successful, it's not only that the system works for the individual, but it has to be something that is modelable, if that's a word, by the people around them, by their family, by their team. So we need to have a team who is willing to really spend the time up front to learn this system to gain the benefits of it. Let's see, if they benefit from hiding and showing in conjunction with lesson planning, that vocabulary builder can really be beneficial. And if we're talking about somebody that we really think is going to need really a very, very robust language system, the full LAMP system is really a very robust system where we can be conjugating verbs with, with different endings, and it's very robust. So that's another reason, if you're like, oh, I think this individual, they've really got a lot of language in their head, and they're really capable of quite a bit of complex language. This system will give that to them. Okay, so another motor plan based app is called Speak for Yourself. And since we're in Pennsylvania, I think it's always wonderful to mention that the person, that one of the developers of Speak for Yourself, we have Heidi and Renee are the developers. Heidi she lives in Pennsylvania. She lives in Bensalem. And she's one of the creators of this app. And this is a motor plan based app that has a number of unique features. No word in Speak for Yourself is ever more than 2 button touches. So in LAMP, some might be, I'd say a lot are 2, and maybe some are 3, potentially even 4, but mostly are kept to kind of 2 or 3 hits. In Speak for Yourself, no word can be farther than 2 navigations. There's a babble feature, so we often talk about hiding buttons. So we may have hidden a whole bunch of buttons to make the array easier for a child to learn or an adult to learn, whoever's exploring the app and learning. But there may be times, and if you had the opportunity to hear Dana Nieder earlier, her daughter Maya uses Speak for Yourself, and she actually showed some videos where Maya was using the babble feature. So you would see a lot of black on the screen because words were hidden, but then she would hit the babble at the top right, which would show all of the words, and then she'd have access to that. But then, if she wanted to look more simplistic again, she can just hit babble and it will go back to the hidden version. So that's a really nice kind of a toggle feature that is unique to Speak for Yourself. It is very easy to hide and show, which is, they call it open and close in this app buttons. It's easy to lock programming down so that you have kids who are not able to get in and kind of wreak havoc on their programming. You are not able to put a word in this system more than once. It won't let you because it's intended that each word has its own location and you just learn where that word is. There is something called the beginner's vocabulary template. So if you don't want to have to go through every page and decide, I want to keep this open, so I'm not going to hide this, but I want to hide this, so I'm going to close that. If you don't want to have to go through all that, the developers have gone through and tried to identify developmentally what might be the most important thing to have still showing in the beginning when you have a lot hidden, and you can just start from there, and that's in the settings. There's a hold that thought feature. So I think, we have individuals who might say certain things all the time. I might say, where's my phone? And I might say that all the time because I can't locate my phone because I lose it constantly. So maybe if I was an AAC user and I needed to say, where's my phone? There's a feature called Hold That Thought that allows you, once it's in the message window, to kind of suck up that little phrase and then be able to spit it back out later. And it adds it into a list of saved phrases or sentences or whatever you were saving. Speak for Yourself was kind of a trailblazer in a search feature that actually showed you where to go. So it's got a very visual search feature. Now, many of the other apps now are following suit, so they were trailblazers there. There's something called whisper mode. And whisper mode allows you, if you are going to, let's say you were building a really long sentence, but you really didn't want the person that's sitting there listening to you or that you're speaking to hear every single word as you build it, you can use whisper mode and then only speak it once it's all complete. Another feature of Speak for Yourself is that when you speak a word and you navigate to the secondary screen, remember there's not more than 2 screens because you can't have more than 2 navigations, it automatically jumps you back to the home page. So that's something, it could be a positive, and perhaps you could work with somebody that was, something that was frustrating. Another thing about, and I'm going to check my chat in a minute because I see a little notification, but another thing that's really kind of wonderful and unique about this particular app is that Heidi, the developer, will give free codes to the app of her app to SLPs and families who are supporting individuals using Speak for Yourself. So we do know that modeling is key. So if you have a copy of it yourself on your own device, then you have better access to being able to model it and not having to do it on their own device. So let's take a look at the chat and see if there's anything I need to see. Link to session hand. Nope, I'm good. Okay. I think I'm good. Yep. All right. Developer extends codes. Okay. All right. So here's some highlights of Speak for Yourself.
Okay, this is Speak for Yourself. In this app, we have 120 buttons. They need to stay at 120 buttons, and the size stays the same because it is a motor plan based app, and there is no changing of motor plans or moving of buttons because that would disrupt the motor plan. No word is more than 2 taps. If you need to say a word that has a secondary screen, so if I want to say go, and it has a secondary screen, that go is in exactly the same location as it was on the front screen.
Go.
I can just do a quick tap. So if I wanted to say think, I can think quickly, and kids learn that, or adults, whoever's using this app. Another feature that's unique to Speak for Yourself is the babble feature. So I had already gone through and hidden a bunch of words for an individual who wasn't ready for the full complement, but then there's this babble feature that's in the toolbar at the top, and that babble feature lets you bring back all the words and toggle between having them hidden without losing all that you've hidden. They were pioneering in the fact that their search feature brings you through the location. So if I search for cookie, it's telling me through that purple box I have to go to eat, and then I have to cookie. Some of the other apps are now hopping on board with the same feature, and it's a very, very helpful feature, especially considering how important modeling is. And those are the ones that I really want to highlight for right now. So that was Speak for Yourself. Okay, this is...
All right. So Speak for Yourself may work well for those who do well with a motor plan based system. Someone who wants access to all the buttons that are hidden. So if there are times that, they want it hidden, but other times they don't, that babble feature is a really nice way to hide and unhide that the user themselves can toggle between. So that gives them power, if there are times like Maya in the video that you saw during Dana's presentation this morning, that it gives them power to be able to say, well, you know what, I want it more simple right now, or I need all the, excuse me, I need a drink, or I need all the words. So it might work well for someone who needs a lot of words hidden, because it is so easy to hide and show in this. You just push open and close, and you just touch the ones you want. Many of the other apps have similar features for hiding. I just find this one is particularly quick. It can be an app that is helpful if the individual does not need PCS, which are board maker symbols, or symbol sticks. They use something called Smarty Symbols. And Smarty Symbols is just a different kind of stick figure library. If you have someone who has spent years working with systems that have PCS, then that maybe something that if you really felt that they need PCS or symbol sticks because they're closer to PCS, then that's a consideration. If you have someone who has difficulty navigating beyond 2 screens, that for whatever reason, whether it's physical or whether perhaps their attention span, once it gets beyond 2 screens, they just kind of lose interest, then this could be the app for them. If they like to save utterance that they can create to share later, they have that easy feature that I just mentioned called Hold That Thought. Now, Hold That Thought, just like in a lot of the other features, there's always someone or more than someone who might be very distracted by certain features. So, there can be someone who's holding every thought, and then, communication maybe is not as efficient as it should be. So you are able to take all of those unique features like babble, like having a QWERTY keyboard on the front screen, like Hold That Thought, like search. You are able to turn those off and lock them in the settings. And the other thing for Speak for Yourself, because you can't change, it is the number of buttons that it is. So if you have somebody who has a visual impairment, or their physical abilities, even with a key guard, don't allow them to access that many buttons, then Speak for Yourself would not be the best option for them. Okay, so the next one is Coughdrop. Now, Coughdrop is quite a unique app in that you'll see that it is web-based. So not only can you program remotely, so you can program on pretty much anything that has access to the internet that can log into your Coughdrop account. It can be loaded on multiple types of devices. So it runs on pretty much any kind of tablet. It runs on Windows tablets. It runs on Android. It runs on Kindle Fire. It runs on iPad. It is important to note that it does seem that some platforms are faster. So for example, the iPad, when you touch a button, how long it takes for it to then kind of go to that navigation. Kindle Fire seems to be a little bit slower than the iPad. I'm not sure if that's just certain types of Kindle Fires or all of them, but it is important, as with anything, that you really want to try it on the type of device that you would be planning to use it on, to make sure that that's going to be quick enough, that it works very well. But the fact that it's available on all those different platforms is unique. And another difference with Coughdrop from other apps is that you can assign multiple supervisors to a particular student or a user's account. So let's say you had a user named Danny, then you could assign the supervisors might be Danny's teacher, Danny's mom, Danny's SLP, and then any of those people can go in and make changes. And then as long as that individual's device is attached to the is live on the internet, then those changes will update on the device. So that's quite different from most of the apps that we've been talking about, and that it is a unique feature. It also has data logging. Now, it's one thing I didn't mention a whole lot about with some of the others. So with ProLoquo to Go, it will hold all the recents so anything that you've activated in the message window will be logged. In Speak for Yourself, there's a history feature which does some data logging. So in Coughdrop, you can log all communications and provide reports based upon the time, the location, and the vocabulary, which is another neat feature. Something that I've really wondered about. We talk about modeling, and the fact is that we want evidence-based practice and we want to have data. So one of the concerns that I always wondered about was, well, how do we indicate whether, if we're saying that people should be modeling, how do we indicate when the modeling is happening versus when the individual using the device is communicating? And Coughdrop has attacked that issue with providing an ability to identify when modeling starts and stops in that history and data logging. So that's a really, really cool feature. Just like the grid offers a free 30-day trial, Coughdrop will actually give a free 2-month trial. So you can have free access to everyone and all the programming and really full access for a 2-month period, which is, wonderful in terms of trials. There's sometimes it's just the little things. One of the things that I have always been frustrated about with most of the apps, ProLoquo or TouchChat, or really most of them, is that there's no undo button. If I select a bunch of buttons and I accidentally hit delete and I delete them off my board in one of those other apps, there's not an undo button to put them back. So then I have to go and reprogram to put them back. So that undo button is a clever addition as well. They make it easy to print boards for backups. Not that that's super challenging. In general, anytime you're running on a tablet-based device, you can generally take screenshots and print those out. But it is nice when you have apps that have easy kind of systems for printing boards. Avaz, that if you were watching during part 1, we kind of briefly looked at Avaz, which had that neat zoom feature. Another feature that Avaz had is also being able to just kind of export all of the pages in your programming to make a backup book. Coughdrop it can be kind of a blank slate like pretty much any of these other apps, but they do have some core-based vocabularies. I always say that Coughdrop is kind of somewhere between a folder-based app and a motor plan-based app, that you can have folders, which is different from something like LAMP or Speak for Yourself. But within those folders, they have it set up somewhat similarly to Speak for Yourself, in that certain buttons will stay in the exact same location underneath. So if you said go, and if your go page goes to a places page, then the word go would be directly underneath where it was on the page before, just like it is in Speak for Yourself. So it's kind of a hybrid between a folder-based and a motor plan-based app. Another nice thing about Coughdrop is the owner of Coughdrop, Brian Whitmer, is an IT guy who has a child with a disability, and that he was just looking for, well, what can I create? So this is a guy who has lots and lots of experience in the tech industry and setting up software. And I think that's probably why we see some of these unique features, because of his unique knowledge in the area of programming. One of the challenges that sometimes people see, let me bring up a picture, bring up the video. One of the challenges sometimes is that, when you download Coughdrop, it uses open source symbols. So sometimes people aren't super happy with the look of the symbols. You can now, for $25, pay and have PCS, so the board maker symbols. So I'm going to play the highlights of Coughdrop.
Okay, what you're seeing now is the main board from Coughdrop. Coughdrop, really one of the most unique features is this app it works across platforms. So you can use this on an iPad or an Android tablet or a Kindle Fire or a Chromebook or a Windows tablet, which can really be very powerful. If you are modeling, you can really have this on a multitude of devices and be modeling, and you can keep your vocabulary updated between all of them because it is cloud-based. And that is one of the really unique features of Coughdrop that can be very, very powerful. A new thing to let you know is that typically what you're probably used to seeing with Coughdrop is we have open source symbols, because that's allowed them to keep the costs down, but they have a new partnership with Mayor Johnson, and they do have the availability of PCS, the board maker photos, as symbols for, I think, a pretty reasonable $25. So that is something for you to know. It is somewhat motor plan based, somewhat folder based. If I want to say is, if I actually want to say is sort of similar to the way that you saw or will be seeing in Speak for Yourself, then I hit it again. We have color coding. We have a lot of the same features as other apps, but besides the cloud-based portion, which is really, really the most notable feature, there's some other unique features. For example, a little one that I like is that there's actually an undo feature while you're working on programming. I'm not sure how many of you have experienced that issue with most apps, is that there is no undo when you do something. Also, another thing that is really nice in Coughdrop is there is actually a way to indicate in the data logging feature when you start modeling and stop modeling.
Sometimes I get ahead of myself. Okay, so that's what Coughdrop looks like. It is a very different interface, and it's something that I definitely think that is worth exploring. Sometimes folks are, it's a little harder to wrap their heads around the way that it is programmed and the way that it's used, because it is so different from other apps. But obviously, until you try it, you don't know. And the fact that you have a 2-month trial, and that it is, everybody in the house could have it on their, their phone, their tablet. So there really are some cool features. So that is Coughdrop. So Coughdrop's features work well with individuals who, have a device other than an iPad. So Android, Kindle, Windows, and Chrome. So we've talked so far, Android, what we've learned is that Avaz is now reintroduced on Android. And then also on Android now we know that Coughdrop. So Coughdrop and Avaz on Android. Kindle, they're one of the only ones, certainly the only robust app that I know of that will run on a Kindle. There are numerous apps that will run on Windows. The Grid will run on Windows. WordPower will run on Windows. Snap Plus Core First. Chrome. So you can run Coughdrop on Chrome, but I did mention in part 1 that Clicker Communicator, which was the one that had the super keys where you could blow up whole sections of when you hit a particular quadrant, they just released on Chrome. So, you know, we have a couple options in each now, but still I would say that the primary platform for our most robust apps is often the iPad. So if you have families or teams who will load program across family devices to model, Coughdrop is wonderful. If you need PCS, board maker symbols, but you're looking for something that is perhaps a little bit less expensive than some of them, or, you know, a different type of app, you can use Coughdrop. If you use multiple devices of different types, if you are in a district that does not support iPads, I've had that experience where a district just said, you know what, we're not using iPads anymore unless there's a, you know, a really, really unique situation. We want you to use something on an Android. That's the tablets we're buying. So, you know, then we needed to do some exploration, and Coughdrop was one of the ones. And then it's easy for them to, you know, to manage, because we can kind of assign supervisors within that in that program to that particular child's device and to their, well, actually to their programming. If you need a trial and you don't have access to loaner equipment, since it'll run on just about anything and it's got a free 2-month trial, that can be a really big benefit. If you have multiple team players who need access to programming, it does scan. So one of the questions that came in kind of when we were finishing up and we were running out of time in part 1 was, which of these apps scan? And I had mentioned that while scanning is now built into the operating system of an iPad, it really is quite complex and not so great to use an app that is meant to be a direct selection app and to then use the iPad scanning. I just wouldn't do it because it ends up, I feel, kind of being a nightmare. So what you would want to do is, if you really did want to use an iPad or a tablet to scan, that you're best choosing an app that has built-in scanning in the app. So Proloquo to Go has that. We talked a little bit about that last time. Clicker Communicator also scans, and Coughdrop scans. So if you do need a tablet solution with scanning, those are some of the scanning ones. I think I just said that twice. Okay, so there are a bunch of other AAC apps that we're not going to really go into, but I feel that it would be neglectful not to mention them. You know, we have been talking about, in part 1, we talked about folder-based, that symbol-based folder type of AAC apps, all robust core-based apps, and those are the ones that I discussed. Not everybody is going to be a symbol user. We do have people who are going to want to spell. I mean, I have a couple of kids that I've supported that even in, you know, kindergarten or first grade, they may be hyperlexic, they may be just unbelievable spellers from very, very early on, and they reject symbols. That has happened. So it's important to know what apps are out there, some of the better apps for text-based AAC. I find that one of the most feature-rich is Proloquo for Text, which comes from Assistiveware, clearly the makers of Proloquo to Go. Proloquo for Text has a unique setup where you have the part where you're typing in the middle. On the left, you have some categories which you can actually color code, so that if there are, you know, if there are your greetings and your closings and your questions, you can actually have things pre-programmed in there on the left, but then still have your kind of blank slate typing tablet in the middle. And then you have some kind of one-hit wonders on the right. So it's a really nice setup. And if you have any questions about that, you can feel free to send them my way via email. There's also Predictable, which has some unique features. You can put like emojis in there, and you can spell. There's some other nice features in Predictable. There's Verbally and Verbally Premium. Verbally is a text-based AAC app where you have core words on the bottom, and then you have you know, you have some kind of saved ones up top. Well, not saved, they come with it, but you can download that for free if you want to take a look at it. The free version has kind of robotic voices. So if you were going to use verbally with someone, you might want to look at the premium one, which has the premium voices. An inexpensive app for text to speech is called Assistive Express. It used to be about $25. It does allow you to do some saved words, but not with the same robust nature as Proloquo for text. And then a really, really cool one that has come out recently is called Jabberwocky. Now, Jabberwocky, let's see if I think I have, it's not here, it's a little bit later in here. So Jabberwocky is something that just came out that works with the newer devices. So I had mentioned in part 1 that TouchChat was released with a beta that allows you to actually head point. So you're moving your head kind of the same way you would with a head mouse, but you get a cursor and then you either dwell on the one that that your head is pointed to, and it's using the front-facing camera. Well, Jabberwocky is also using the front-facing camera and is the same kind of head pointing technology. And you can try it for free. And it will work just like the TouchChat only on the iPhone X series and the new iPad Pros that have the facial recognition technology. It has to have facial recognition for the head pointing to work. And we'll take a little bit of a look at that, I believe, later on. So there's also some other AAC apps, and I will say that I haven't personally used these with anyone, but that it doesn't mean that there's not someone out there that I'm going to meet at some point that will do better with a visual scene-based app. I know the folks from Penn State, particularly with really, really young kids, feel that visual scene-based apps are helpful for very, very young children. There's Snapscene from Tobii Dynavox, there's Chattable from Therapy Box, there's Seen and Heard, and there's Seen Speak. And these are all, not something that we're going to go into today, and not something that I typically use, but, really what my goal has been today, and I really had to go very quickly in part 1, is to provide kind of an awareness level of what is out there, what should I be looking for, what are some of the unique features of these things, why might I consider it? So here is your awareness level that these things exist, and their names should you want to explore further. Okay, now here's another app. So there is an app called GoTalk Now, and we also have GoTalk Now Plus. And I feel like it's important to mention, it has some unique features. Now, GoTalk Now is not a robust core-based AAC app. It is really more of a blank slate kind of app that I see being used for in one of two ways. One of the coolest ways I see using it is it's very powerful in the way that you can program any button in GoTalk Now to launch a song, a video, a YouTube link. It will even launch a direction for a Hue light bulb, one of the light bulbs that you can turn on through, like, for example, Amazon Alexa. And you can put these into any button, and you can have up to, I believe, 25 buttons per screen. So you can create really cool leisure devices. You can create, stories being read. Really, the sky is the limit. So that's one of the ways that I typically go to GoTalk Now for. So, when a child has their communication device, but then they also have some sort of, additional device, perhaps an iPad, for leisure, that's often how I use this. But I will say that there are occasions where I have, with some of my most emergent and most significantly involved students, have used GoTalk Now as an AAC option. Many times because they had so much difficulty attending to the device and attending to what the buttons did, that if we had the button actually launch a video, if they said, rather than them just saying they want the ABC song, that if they touch it and it says ABC song, or I want the ABC song, or however their device was set up, that it could then actually launch it. you know, I think it's a unique case, and it's not ideal in many situations, but, you know, you will always, you have to just always keep your mind open. And even though, you know, robust core is what should be happening and you shouldn't be launching videos, that sometimes we have to get creative with certain individuals, you know, and do what we need to do to make sure that they can really begin to communicate. So GoTalk Now is accessible. Just like Proloquo to Go and Clicker Communicator, it has built-in scanning settings. So think about it, you know, think about our most involved kids with complex bodies, that both from the leisure aspect of being able to scan through choices and launch YouTube videos all with their switch, that would be an awesome use of GoTalk Now. Oh, it has a maximum of 36 buttons per screen, not 25. I misspoke earlier. You can store an unlimited amount of messages. There is a free light version, so that will give you 5 screens. So if you want to play around with this app and what it does and how the accessibility settings work, I love when they have free versions. I love that the Grid has a 30-day trial. I love that Coughdrop has a 2-month trial. So this free light version is not timed. You can have it forever, and you can have up to 5 screens. So, you know, you may find uses for that. There's 2 versions. There's the GoTalk Now, which is $80, and then there's GoTalk Now Plus, which is $150, and you're paying the extra there to have access to the Symbol Sticks library images and the premium a cappella voices. So like those the voices that you might that you get included with Proloquo to Go, like Josh and Ella, some of those better voices. So GoTalk Now's features work well with individuals who have the most complex bodies and learning needs, and are emergent communicators who want or need maybe perhaps large buttons, maybe just a few per page. Individuals who have not shown motivation or interest in standard grid-based AAC apps, or individuals who may need, as I mentioned, a separate leisure iPad to be able to access their world and access some leisure things like songs and videos and turning on lights. And here is a little video showing GoTalk Now.
Okay, so today our purpose really was looking at existing downloadable AAC apps that are robust and have a robust vocabulary or multiple robust vocabularies for us to choose from once downloaded. I think it's important not to completely overlook GoTalk Now or GoTalk Now Plus. The plus is when you have added high quality voices and added symbol sticks. I think it's important to mention it because not all of our students, of our children, are at a level where they are maybe ready to use some of the more sophisticated vocabularies. And there are some unique features to GoTalk Now. One of them is that it has really nice scanning controls if you do need to scan on an iPad. Another is that you can, build what you want rather easily, but it will also do something which is pretty cool, which is it will link to whether it be a video or a YouTube.
Well, I'm kind of repeating myself there, so it's hard to remember exactly what I said in these videos. So, but what you can see here, just from the image, is that here's something where I custom created. This was for a young man who could not, the typical apps were not really working for him. He needed fewer, but he also needed something to kind of get him going with wanting to use this. So when we had I want, then it would it launched to a page that had the things that he might want, and then those, if it was music, then it would launch to music. So it is a unique app. It is not robust. You can create a core-based user just like you could create that in other apps, but it's important to know about. All right. So the Jabberwocky, this is the information on Jabberwocky, and you'll have this, this QR code and this link. That's the one that will run on your iPhone 10 or your new iPad Pro, where you can use head pointing for a text-based AAC app. So we know about robust core vocabulary. We need the right balance of core and fringe, but how do we decide where to start? So what Kate says is start with the high quality vocabulary already in your system. I see lots of people trying to create core vocabularies from scratch. Use what's there in these better systems that we just reviewed, especially in part 1 and the beginning of today, of this afternoon. So the work is done for you. It's really not too much vocabulary, because remember, you need vocabulary to be able to model it. If it's not there, you can't teach it. That just providing choice boards isn't communication, that we need to be using evidence-based practice. And these better robust AAC apps that I've shown, they are based upon research, and that stuff happens. So if you've done something entirely custom and then something happens to it, maybe you're back up or you didn't back up or it wasn't right, then everything is gone. But if you started with something that kind of started as a template that you just customized, then you don't lose as much. With customization, you want to make sure that not too many people on the team are customizing, because that can get kind of hairy. Pay close attention to motor plan consistency. If you're putting a word on more than one spot, you have backups and additions that save every time you do that. Put their full name and the date on your backups, because I can tell you it's really confusing when you go in later when it just has a child's first name and no date. And then especially when you have more than one kid using an app or one user. To use vocabulary questionnaires. Now, there's a bunch of these considerations here. I wanted to make sure that I got them into the handout, knowing full well that I might not get to all of them, but I want you to know what's here for you to be able to explore. So there's more app considerations. But then what I started going into is other considerations when using an iPad as an AAC system. So the slides after this that are actually part of your handout are talking about, well, what might you consider for protection? What might you consider for amplification, for portability, for viewing angle, and for key guards, and for funding? So I did provide you with information on all that, knowing that I probably wouldn't get to it. So this is what they look like. You can go through your slides. If you have specific questions on anything I already talked about, or any of these pieces of information, I encourage you to send me an email. I'm always happy to, try to answer or send resources. So I did also have some things here about backups. So, not only that you should do it and what types, but some blog posts that give you some helpful hints on how to make those backups. If you need more information on iPad cases and accessories, my Pinterest site is a good place to check out. I do try to keep that, at least that part, updated. And we talked about data. It's important for a lot of devices. We actually have this new option. It's important to kind of learn about that. And here is a QR code if you're interested. So Realize Language is available on Saltillo and PRC systems. So the LAMP Words for Life, Touch Chat, as well as the dedicated devices from both of those companies. And it does, we talked about Coughdrop doing some of those data collection and reporting and visuals. Realize does a really cool job with that. So that's about all we have time for. So that was between part 1 and part 2, that was your whirlwind tour of AAC apps and robust features, and I hope that you learned something, and feel free to contact me if you need anything else.
Lauren, on behalf of Patton, I'd like to thank you again for joining us today and sharing all of this valuable information and the wealth of resources that you've provided to our attendees. Thanks for your participation today. Before I provide you with the code, one last reminder that the session verification survey will have been posted by now at 3 o'clock, where you'll be able to enter your codes for the Act 48 and certificates of attendance. The survey must be completed by this Friday, May 17th at 4 p.m. The code for your session is 5826. Once again, thank you all for your interest and attention today. We'll end our webinar now, and you'll find the links to log into the next, for all of the handouts on the conference webpage for later review.